They say birthdays get quieter as you get older. Fewer phone calls, fewer candles, and eventually, fewer people who remember. But this year, I allowed myself a small, fragile hope. I was turning 69, nothing fancy. I didn't want a party or gifts or some over-the-top gesture. All I wanted was a quiet dinner with my son, Trevor, just like we used to do when he was younger. Chicken on the grill, his favorite potato salad, and the old peach cobbler recipe his dad used to swear by. The kind of meal that reminded us who we were, not what we had or didn't have. The days leading up to it, I found myself humming around the kitchen. I washed the good tablecloth, pulled out the chipped plates I never stopped loving, and even polished the silver I hadn't touched in years. I cleaned the porch swing, arranged the chairs just so, and picked fresh mint from the little garden out back. It was silly, maybe, but it felt good to prepare for something. It felt like I mattered. Trevor had promised he'd come. He said he'd bring the wine and that we'd talk about the wedding plans. He and his fiancée had been asking if they could use the farm for the ceremony. I said yes, of course. How could I not? This land had seen everything: births, deaths, fights, holidays, and long, silent summers. If it could hold all those memories, surely it could carry a wedding too. As I set the table that afternoon, I looked at the photo on the windowsill. Trevor at age 10, freckles across his nose, grinning as he held a fishing rod twice his size. I smiled back at it. My boy, my only child. He hadn't always been this distant. I lit a candle before the sun set, just a small one. Nothing dramatic. The food was ready, the house smelled like butter and rosemary, and I wore the soft blue blouse he once said brought out my eyes. I sat by the window, waiting. The clock ticked, slow and steady. He'd be here soon, I thought, just a little late. That's all. He'll show up. He always used to. The candle burned down to a nub before I finally blew it out. By 9 o'clock, the chicken had gone dry in the oven and the potato salad had started to sweat. I left it all on the table for as long as I could. Part of me thought maybe he was running late. Maybe there was traffic or something came up with the wedding plans. But deep down, I already knew. Trevor wasn't coming. No phone call, just a quick text around 7 that said, "Hey Mom, something came up. Rain check? Love you." I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything. Now they felt hollow, lightweight, like they could float away and never come back. I ate a little of the cobbler by myself, just a few bites, then wrapped everything up and placed it neatly in the fridge. I didn't cry. I didn't stomp or shout. I just moved slower, like the air had gotten thicker inside the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something kept tugging at me. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and checked the security camera at the gate. It was mostly habit. I didn't expect to see anything. But there he was, Trevor, yesterday, around 5:23 p.m., just hours before I lit the candle and put dinner on the table. He'd been here, on my birthday, but not for me. The footage showed him standing by the edge of the property with his fiancée, a man in a suit, and 2 others I didn't recognize. They had clipboards, tablets, were pointing at the barn, the field, the oak trees near the pond. At one point, Trevor gestured toward the house, my house, like it was part of a brochure. My stomach twisted. That wasn't a wedding tour. That was a business meeting. He came here on the day I cooked his favorite meal, not to see me, not to wish me happy birthday, but to make plans for my land, my home. Like I was already gone. I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were cold. I didn't say a word. I just sat there in the dark kitchen, the smell of rosemary still hanging in the air, and felt something shift inside me, small at first, but steady. The next morning, I woke up to a kitchen that still smelled like rosemary and disappointment. The leftovers were packed neatly in the fridge, untouched. I poured myself a cup of coffee, though it tasted more like silence than anything else. I didn't have much of an appetite, but I needed to do something, anything to feel like I still had a rhythm. Out of habit, I sat at the desk by the window and opened my email. That's when I saw it, a message from Trevor. Subject line, "Quick doc, sign when you get a chance." No happy birthday, no sorry I missed dinner. I clicked it open. A PDF attachment, legal language. It was a property transfer form. Something about temporary authorization for land use and refinancing. But when I read it closely, and I mean really read it, I saw what it was. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't about a wedding. It was a full transfer of ownership. My name would still be on it for a few months, but Trevor's would be the one holding legal rights. Quietly, legally, permanently. I stared at the paper. My hands shook. The pen was right there beside me, and for a moment I almost reached for it. Almost. Instead, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The birthday cake, the one I baked myself, chocolate with pecans, still sat on the counter covered in plastic wrap. Not a single slice taken, not a single candle blown out. I sat down, rested my elbows on the table, and finally let the tears come. They weren't loud. There was no sobbing, no screaming. Just quiet, steady tears that wouldn't stop. I cried for the meal I cooked. I cried for the boy I raised. I cried for the woman I had become. Invisible. Useful only when convenient. I'd spent years pretending that being ignored wasn't the same as being forgotten. That Trevor was just busy, just distracted. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. He didn't forget my birthday. He replaced it with a business deal. And I was just in the way. That morning, something inside me cracked, not with anger, but with finality. I looked around my kitchen, the walls I painted with my own hands, the cabinets I filled for decades, and realized for the first time, this was no longer my home. Not really. I didn't leave the house that day. I barely moved from the chair by the kitchen window. The air was still and the sun poured in like it didn't know something inside me had broken. For hours, I just sat and thought. I thought about the years I'd spent keeping this place alive. After Bill passed, everyone expected I'd sell the farm. It was too much for one person, too much land, too much history, but I couldn't let it go. I plowed those fields myself. I fixed fences with blistered hands. I paid off back taxes by baking pies and cleaning houses. I kept the roof on and the lights on, not because I wanted praise, but because I believed I was saving it for someone. For Trevor. I always believed he'd come back, see the value of this place. Not just the market value, but the roots, the memories, the sweat built into the walls. But now, I saw it all clearly. Trevor didn't love this farm. He didn't respect it. He saw it as an asset, a location, a means to an end. I thought back to all the phone calls he never returned, the holidays he skipped, the way he barely looked up from his phone when he visited. I brushed it off as stress, as busyness, as modern life. But deep down, I think I always knew. He didn't see me. He saw what I had, and he wanted it. That truth stung deeper than I expected. I wasn't just hurt. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I had let myself believe I still mattered in his world. That somehow, after everything, I was more than just a signature he needed. But shame turned into something else. Resolve. That evening, I called Jean, an old friend who used to be a realtor before retiring. I told her about the farm, the situation, and what I needed. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Give me a few days." I walked through each room of the house that night, quietly, touching the walls, the furniture, the window panes. I didn't cry, I just absorbed it all, because I knew what was coming. I was going to sell it, not out of spite, not to get even, but because I finally understood this place was never the legacy I thought it was. It was my prison, and I was ready to walk out the door. The paperwork didn't take long. Jean found a buyer by the end of the week, a retired couple from Austin who had always dreamed of owning land. They weren't looking to flip it or build condos. They just wanted a quiet place with trees and space to breathe. It felt right. The day I signed the contract, I didn't tell anyone. No Facebook post, no family group chat, no call to Trevor. I packed what I could into a few boxes, photo albums, my mother's quilt, Bill's old fishing hat, and left the rest. I didn't need the dining set or the rocking chairs. I didn't need the heavy things anymore. The mobile home I moved into sat just a few miles down the road, near the town library. It was small, but it was mine. No ghost of obligation lived there. No voice echoing in the hall, reminding me what I owed someone. Just peace. A few days later, my phone rang. Trevor. I didn't answer. I knew what the message would be. It came 30 minutes later. Mom, what the hell? You sold it without telling me? There was no, how are you? No, are you okay? Just outrage. I stared at the message and set the phone down. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I wasn't trying to make a point. I was just done being useful, done being managed, done waiting for someone to see me. He called again the next morning, voice sharp. You knew we were planning the wedding there. How could you do this? I took a breath. Calm, even. Trevor, I said, I kept that place together for 40 years, alone. I gave everything to it, and to you. I didn't sell it to spite you. I sold it to save myself. There was silence on the line, just his breathing. I'm sorry you're upset, I added, but I don't owe anyone a life I no longer want. He didn't respond. Not really. Just a clipped goodbye and a click. I stood by the window after that call, watching the trees sway outside, and for the first time in decades, I felt light. The days after the sale were quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't hurt, just stillness, space. I started waking up early again, not because I had chores to do, but because I wanted to. I'd make myself a cup of coffee, sit by the window in my little mobile home and watch the morning sun slide across the gravel. Sometimes I'd read. Sometimes I'd just sit. No expectations, no pressure, no pretending. Trevor didn't call again, not for weeks. Part of me wondered if he ever would, and strangely, that thought didn't sting the way it used to. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting. I was just done. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first, but something told me to answer. Hi, Mom. His voice was softer this time. Tired. I know I've been awful. I said things I shouldn't have. I treated you like a tool, and I see that now. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I had to say it. There was a long pause. I could hear wind on his end. Maybe he was outside. Maybe he'd finally stepped away from all the noise. I lost the loan, he said quietly. The wedding's off. She left. I closed my eyes, not out of satisfaction, but sorrow. For all of it. For how far we had fallen from what once was. I'm sorry, Trevor, I said, my voice steady, but I can't fix this for you. I know, he replied. I don't want anything from you. I miss you. I miss us. I let those words sit between us for a moment, not rushing to fill the silence. I'm still here, I said, but I'm not who I used to be. I can't go back to the woman who lived her life for everyone else. I don't want her back, he said. I want to know you now. Something in me softened then, not completely, but enough to let a little warmth in. Maybe we couldn't start over, but maybe we could begin something new. The kind of relationship where I wasn't the giver and he wasn't the taker. Just two people, trying. That night, I sat by the window again, tea in hand, and whispered to no one in particular, I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got something better. Peace. If you've ever felt like Helen, see, like your love, your years, your sacrifices were quietly forgotten, I want you to know you are not alone. Have you ever had to let go of something or someone to protect your peace? Share your story in the comments. I read every one of them, and your voice matters more than you know. And if this story touched something in you, consider subscribing. I share stories for women like you, women who've given everything and are finally ready to take something back.